Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Delta 8, one of the two P-tiers that is taking place this weekend in Japan, and this event was absolutely ludicrous. For our top 16 finishers, you're going to have RARU, Spargo, Zomba, and Gluttony in 13th, Ken, Hurt, MKLeo, and CARMELO in 9th. In 7th, you had level 1 and RARU. 5th was Aka and Snow. 4th was TAMAP. 3rd was SHUTON. 2nd was MIYA. And winning the entire thing was, of course, ACOLA. First things first, let's talk about how the invaders did at this event, specifically the ones from NA, and the answer to that is okay. First up is going to be MK Big Boss. He is the lowest placing invader from NA, ending up getting 65th, which is not terrible at the end of the day, but not great either. He ends up losing to Shiryuki in the winner's side, and then Rimu in the loser side. I don't have a ton to say about this one just because I never got to watch him play because he did lose fairly early on, but I think he can bounce back for Kagaribi. He's a very talented player, and I'm not too worried about it. Then you're going to have Base Mage finishing in 33rd. He's going to end up losing to MIYA in the winner's side and Leaf in the loser side. You definitely can't feel too bad about losing to MIYA, and then I'll talk about Leaf when I talk about him in just a bit. Next up is going to be Meister. He's going to end up getting 25th, losing to TAMAP in the winner's side, and also losing to Leaf in the loser side. Again, we are definitely going to be talking about Leaf, but I heavily expect Meister to be bouncing back from this performance. I do still think that he's going to get top 8 at Kagaribi. I think his bracket is pretty good there, and the setback is always greater than the comeback, or the other way around is what I meant. Next up is going to be Spargo, actually finishing in 13th, and he got upset in pools by RARU, the Donkey Kong player, and Cloud Donkey Kong has always been one of those matchups where Donkey Kong actually does pretty decent. I could definitely see it being even, but also Spargo should definitely not be losing that when he is a world-class player, and that is a massive upset by RARU. And you do have Spargo making a pretty decent losers run, all things considered. Beats Kept, he beats Rio, he gets a really nice win over Yaura, but he ends up falling to level 1, the Toon Link player, and another player that we're definitely going to be talking about a lot later on in the video. So pretty rough performance from Spargo. I don't want to say this completely knocks him out of contention for being the best in the world, but taking a loss to RARU, who's very likely not going to be ranked super high this season. I think he could get into the top 100 after this performance, but we're going to have to wait and see. Regardless, though, it's going to be tough. There are other players that are in contention for number of the world that have bad placements, like MIYA, for example, but it just makes it a lot harder. He's going to have to pretty much win Kagaribi, so we'll see how that ends up going. You actually had a lot of invaders finishing in 13th place. Another one of them is going to be Gluttony. He ends up losing to ACOLA in the winner's side and CARMELO in the loser's side. So unfortunately for him, he ends up getting double Steved at this event. And funnily enough, he manages to take it closer with ACOLA than he does versus CARMELO, taking it all the way to game 5. And it's very clear he's putting a lot of time into the Steve matchup, but it's a extremely difficult one for Wario to overcome, and while I do think he can do it eventually, it's just not quite there yet, though he does get a really nice win over Gak. That was a player that he was struggling with in the past, so at least he has something nice to take away from this event. Next up is going to be Zomba, also finishing in 13th place. In the winner's side, is going to end up losing to RARU, which is one of the more impressive upsets of the tournament, in my opinion, just considering how much experience Zomba has in the Luigi matchup. He plays versus Guy all the time, and I do think that Rob wins that matchup, even though once Luigi gets his hands on you, it's really, really bad. Just don't let him get his hands on you and edgeguard him every single time, but Zomba wasn't able to do this time around. I believe it was a reverse 3-0 from RARU as well, so huge props in for that one. And in the loser side, he runs into a pretty difficult matchup with TAMAP, who is playing out of his mind at this tournament, managing to take it all the way to game 5, but Bayonetta Rob is just not a fun matchup for Rob. You just get clipped by basically every move she throws out, and you die extremely early. And the final invader and the highest placing invader of the event is going to be MKLeo. So shout out to MKLeo for that. He ends up getting a win on Ryuo in the loser side before falling to SHUTON, and it was a 3-0 in SHUTON's favor. Every single one of those games was so close, but SHUTON's going to keep up his perfect record on MKLeo, which is one of the crazier stats in Smash Ultimate. And in the loser side, he does manage to get his revenge for Spargo by beating RARU in one of the craziest sets of the entire tournament. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about RARU, but then he unfortunately runs into Aka, and as we all know, he's in Japan and he can't read Japanese, so that kind of tells you how it went. Now I want to talk about some of the low-tier runs, starting off with the most notable one from RARU. He got that massive upset over Spargo, one of the most impressive upsets in Smash Ultimate history, and he does it in a 2-0, by the way, so shout out to him for that. Obviously, he ends up losing to level 1 the next round, but then he makes a really nice loser run, beating Tomisa, Fui, and Goryoka. And I'm not going to make a segment for Goryoka, but huge props to him for how he was just playing at this event. He has a really nice upset over Zachary, and versus her, and honestly Rarakusu, he was playing out of his mind. Absolutely could have won both of those sets, and I'm honestly really excited to see how he does at Kagaribi. And then we go into MKLeo Rarakusu, which is probably my favorite set of the entire tournament. It's either that or Hurt SHUTON, because this set was crazy. I believe it's a 3-stock game 1 from Rarakusu on Donkey Kong versus Byleth, and then he goes Falco and also wins game 2, and then Leo pulls off a reverse 3-0 with the Joker, also 3-stocking the Falco in game 3. It was just a ridiculous set and very, very entertaining to watch. Huge props to Rarakusu, and that wasn't the only low tier run that MKLeo ended up ending this tournament, because right before he fought Rarakusu, he had to fight MyPan, who was a Zelda player that was crazy. They ended up getting wins on 33 parent blocks, and most notably took out Zach Ray, sending him home at 25th, and they were out of their mind. Like, there's this one clip on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen it, where Zachary back airs with Rob, and before the back air can even come out, he reacts with a forward air and just kills him. Like, that is insane. He takes MKLeo to game 5 as well with solo Zelda. Like, such an impressive player. Really hope that we get to see more of him, because I just don't really get to watch Zelda, and I didn't know that she could do things like that. Adding for block, I should also add that MyPan got wins on T in the pools phase, as well as Right Chia. I believe that's how you say that. So just another couple players to add to his insane run. You also had Leaf with a crazy good losers run. He ends up losing fairly early on to YN, the Zelda player, and shouts to YN for also getting a really nice upset over Osimo as well. But Leaf just goes crazy on the loser side. He beats NoHoHo, Art Sniff, and I'm to get into the top 64. Once in the top 64, he gets a win on Takara, Base Mage, Meister, and barely loses to Glutini. Glutini made some crazy comebacks in that set, but it was absolutely one that Leaf could have won. I don't know how you make a losers run like this in general, but to do it with Robin of all characters is especially impressive. You also had Lax making a pretty nice losers run on the Chrom and the Roy as well, but mainly Chrom. He beats Lappy, YN, and Taishi before losing to Zomba, and the final losers run that I want to mention is going to be coming in from Terakatori. He ends up getting 49th at this event, only losing to Zomba and Huto, but he made those games versus Zomba extremely close, and he also managed to get upsets over both Jogabu and Taikei, which is ridiculous. To do that with Little Mech is absolutely absurd. Some of the best wins that character has ever gotten, and this tournament was just crazy. I should also mention all the players that were supposed to get top 8 that didn't get top 8. I already touched on Spargo and Zomba, so I'm not going to do it again. But the first one is going to be Yaura. He ends up getting 17th place, losing to Aka actually in the winner's side, and then Spargo in the loser's side. Spargo gets his run back from Kagaribi 10, and it was all Aegis this time around. I'm not sure who he played in their first set, but I believe it was Cloud, so it seems like Aegis is going to be his character of choice with Samus, and I definitely agree that that is a better matchup than Cloud. Not that that's an unwinnable one by any means, but I just think Aegis does fairly well. You're going to have Ken finishing in 9th place. He's going to end up losing to ACOLA in the winner's side and TAMAP in the loser's side, and you honestly can't feel too bad about WoW when you lose to the guy who won the event and the guy who probably popped off the hardest at the event. Like, yeah, it makes sense. And the final one is going to be Hurt. He ends up losing to SHUTON in the winner's side in probably the best set of the tournament. It was absolutely crazy, especially that game 4. That was one of the best games of Smash Ultimate that I've just literally ever seen. And in the loser side, he loses to that ludicrous one from level 1. So overall, still a really solid placement from all of these guys, especially Hurt and Ken. But it is going to be Hurt's worst placement of the season, which is actually kind of crazy. And all things considered, not the end of the world. And I talked about every 13th and 9th place finisher aside from CARMELO, so I'm going to talk about CARMELO now. He ends up getting wins on IM and YN before losing to Ken, and I would say that that is Steve's most difficult matchup. You can't feel too bad about losing it. It's definitely doable as ACOLA wins it right after, but I digress. In the loser side, you have him getting wins on Matsunabe and Glutini before falling to RARU, and that Glutini win is especially impressive. Even though it's definitely a really bad matchup for Wario, he is still a world-class player, and to beat him in any matchup is something to write home about. And CARMELO is one of those Steve prospects in Japan that is starting to do super well recently, and this is another amazing result on his resume. To get 9th at a P tier is pretty impressive no matter what character you are on. And I'm going to be moving on to the top 8 now just because that's where a majority of these super interesting runs ended up finishing. But if there's any runs that I left out and you're curious about, just leave me a comment and I'll be sure to tell you how they were, and sub while you're down there. But let's get into this top 8. So let's get into this top 8, and pretty much every single crazy run at this tournament actually ended up into the top 8. Like, 7th through 4th place are all, like, ludicrous. Like, nobody would have predicted these runs. Well, maybe some people would, but let's start off with the 7th place finishers of RARU and Level 1. Starting off with RARU, he picks up wins on Takara, Matsunabe, and Zomba in the winner's side. I already said it earlier, but that Zomba win is so impressive to me. He has a lot of experience in the Luigi matchup, and Rob can destroy Luigi once he gets his hands on him, but down 2-0, he stays composed. He pulls off the reverse 3-0. RARU's damage output is just like unreal, especially versus a character like Rob. He ends up losing to MIYA in the winner's side, though he does manage to take a game, and to get into the top 8, he beats CARMELO, and then once in the top 8, he does lose to TAMAP, but still a very impressive run. RARU is easily the best Luigi player in the world at this point, and I think he's shooting for a spot to be top 10 in the world right now. Like, he has one bad performance at Umebora, everything else is top 8 at a major, and he's doing it with Luigi. To be consistent with his character is otherworldly. And the other 7th place run is also crazy, because you have Level 1, the Toon Link player, just popping off. He beats Ochi, Ike, and Rarikusu before losing to Snow in the winner's side, and in the loser's bracket, that's when he goes nuclear, beating T, Spargo, and Hurt all back to back. That is an incredible run from this player, and once in the top 8, he does lose to Aka, but he already made the statement, and he made a lot more people have faith in Toon Link. I'm still a little bit of a Toon Link hater, but I'm not gonna lie, the stuff that he was doing at this tournament was kind of crazy. He had really good frame trapping. He was moving around with all of his projectiles, just weaving in and out expertly. He was able to find the kill all the time. Bomb Bear is still really good. Level 1 had arguably the most impressive run of the tournament. At any other major, people would be talking about this one for weeks, and people probably still will be, but at this major, there was like 40 other runs like that. On to our 5th place finishers, being Snow and Aka. Starting off with Snow, he's going to pick up wins on Nano, Leah, Rocky, Level 1, and Aka to get into the top 8 through the winner's side. And once in the top 8, he does lose out to SHUTON and TAMAP, but still a pretty incredible run from this player. He is like easily the best Mario in the world. He has been for a little bit, but he just keeps hammering the point home. He wants everyone to know it. 5th place at a premier tournament. There's a lot of Mario players in the current meta of Smash Ultimate, but not a single one of them is able to reach the levels that Snow is currently doing, and he's looking to be like a top 20 player in the world right now, so massive props to him for that. The other 5th place finisher is going to be Aka. He takes out Kamisuki and Alice in Pool's phase, then he beats MIYA and Yaura to get to the top 8 qualifier. He does end up losing to Snow, but beats MK Leo to get into the top 8, and yeah, he couldn't read the menu, but it's still MK Leo. Like, you gotta be feeling good about that win, and he beats Level 1 as well, and considering the caliber of players that Level 1 beat at this event, like, by transitive property, Level 1 beats, like, what, Spargo, Hurt, and T. Aka's the best player in the world because he's beaten Spargo, Hurt, and T. Like, that is ludicrous. And then he does end up losing after that to TAMAP, or not TAMAP, to ACOLA, but still a incredible run from this player. And with this run, I would probably say that he's the best hero player in the world, at least for this season. It's definitely still between him and Beast Mode Paul, but this is the highest high that Hero has ever seen in Smash Ultimate, so big ups to him for that. In 4th place, you're going to have TAMAP, the prospect that I had this tournament, and he did not disappoint me. He ends up beating Moku Moku and Lemonza to get out of the pool's phase. Once out of the pool's phase, he gets a really nice win over Meister, and he wasn't able to double eliminate the Game & Watches, falling to MIYA in the winner's side. Once in the loser's side, he ends up beating Gak, who he recently lost to at KawaiiCon, so big ups to him for that one. He beats Zomba, even though the match was very, very good for Bayo. It's still Zomba. He is a world-class player. Then he also beats Ken to get into the top 8. Once in the top 8, he manages to beat both RARU and Snow, taking out the Mario Brothers before losing to ACOLA. So I had TAMAP beating both MIYA and ACOLA at this event, and he ends up losing to both of them. But he manages to take a game versus both players, and this run is definitely going to cement TAMAP as the best Bayonetta player in the world currently. Lima and Bloom Forever are also incredible with this character, but they just don't have the highs this season that TAMAP has. This isn't his only incredible run at a major event, and I just want to point out that TAMAP has saved Delta for being a P-tier event, and he also made 3 other events majors by performing the way that he did, because if you don't know how the Smash Ultimate ranking system works, players are worth a certain amount of points, and TAMAP got his points increased this event by the amazing run that he had, and now a bunch of majors that were just barely not before got upgraded to it, and this event was able to keep its P-tier status because Goblin DQ'd, so it ended up dropping, but just for a little bit, TAMAP ends up saving it. And I know some people on Twitter were kind of complaining thing about retroactive tournaments, but I don't agree about that at all. If a player is significantly better in the second half of the season, getting 4th place at a premier tournament, they shouldn't be based off their last ranking, because that's not how good they are as a player. And the final thing I want to point out about TAMAP is his playstyle is so much different than the other Bayonetta players. Like, when you look at Lima play, I think Lima plays correct Bayonetta, which is he's going to camp you super duper hard, and Bloom is just like kind of trying to play footsie with you in neutral and trying to outplay you, because fundamentally he's just pretty much better than everyone. TAMAP is just running at you. He does not care at all. He's going for every single interaction that he thinks is going to get the kill, and because of that, he drops a ton of combos, but if it hits, you literally just explode, and people are exploding a lot versus this guy. Super impressive player, and I think he can make a similar run at kagaribi. In 3rd place, you're going to have SHUTON, and he was playing mainly Olimar at this event, which was definitely a pleasant surprise for me. He picks up wins on Naucha, Kahuka, who's a very good Donkey Kong player that also popped off for this event that I didn't mention, so shoutouts to him, and MKLeo, 3-0ing MKLeo, keeping the streak up, being up 12-0 now lifetime, which is just such a crazy stat line to have, as well as taking out her in one of the best sets, if not the best set, of the entire tournament. Clutches it out in Game 5. Once in the top 8, he manages to beat Snow, and then he runs into the 2 people that are giving him the most trouble right now, and the 2 people that you're going to kind of always see in these top 3 of Japanese majors, of any major to be honest, which is MIYA in the winner's side, and then ACOLA in the loser's side. He manages to take MIYA to Game 5 with the Olimar, but ultimately loses it, and then gets 3-0'd by ACOLA in Aegis versus Steve. But amazing run from SHUTON. Really interesting to see kind of why he went to the Olimar for this tournament. I don't know if it was just like an Olimar bracket, or if he was feeling it with that character that day, or maybe he's been putting a lot more work in with Olimar, but whatever he was doing, he should keep doing it, because he looked incredible at this event. This was his best performance of the year so far, and he had a lot of momentum coming into this weekend with a 3rd place, or rather a 1st place at Game is Game. Now he's got a 3rd place here, and he definitely could keep it up at kagaribi. And I also just want to point out that I think Olimar is a fairly underrated character. He just hits you so hard. If you get comboed when you have like a white Pikmin, or even just like some of the normal Pikmin on you, you just take so much percent. You have that haymaker of a move like back here. Don't get me wrong, he's not like one of the most broken characters in the entire game, but in the right hands, he can do some serious damage. In 2nd place, you're gonna have MIYA. He picks up wins on Chicken, Base Mage, TAMAP, and RARU to get into the top 8. And I think the most impressive win of that list is going to be TAMAP, especially considering that he literally just beat Meister. And MIYA has an amazing record on RARU. So in terms of rankings, it's probably RARU, but that's not a matchup I was too worried about for him. Once in the top 8, he manages to beat ACOLA in a Game 4, as well as SHUTON in a Game 5 to get Grand Finals winner's side. But he wasn't able to hold off ACOLA this time around. Ends up losing the first set 4-1. The only game that he wins is versus the Pyra 3-1, not 4-1. And in the Grand Finals reset, he ends up losing in a Game 5, a very close Game 5, so that absolutely could have gone into his favor, but it just didn't this time around. This is another amazing result from MIYA. He really looks incredible. Ever since that Circus CFL weekend where he looked a little bit shaky, he's just been on such a tear, winning a bunch of events. And also, he now retroactively won 2 more major events because of the TAMAP buff. So now MIYA has 6 tournament wins this season, 6 major wins this season, and the runner-up is now going to be ACOLA and Shattuck tied at 2. So even with some of his lower placements, he is absolutely in contention for best in the world, and may even be leading the charge right now. But when we're talking about the best player in the world, really only one name should be in your mouth, and that's, of course, your winner of Delta 8, ACOLA. He picks up wins on Lappy, Shiryuki, Gluttony, and Ken to get into the top 8. Once in the top 8, he loses his first set of the entire year with MIYA, and in the loser side, he beats Aka. TAMAP stunts on him Game 4, by the way, with the Aegis. 3-0 SHUTON to get to the Grand Finals, and once in the Grand Finals, he resets the bracket versus MIYA, only dropping a game with the Aegis, and clutches it out in an incredible Game 5. And with this tournament, it's really hard to argue against ACOLA being the best player in the world. The really only argument that you have versus him is that he doesn't have a ton of attendance, and that is a pretty valid argument, all things considered. But if he just goes to more events and continues performing like this, which I do think he will, he's just gonna have the title. This is his worst performance of the entire year because he dropped a set to MIYA. Isn't that crazy? He still won the event, and it's his worst performance of the year. He is looking incredible. The Steve is on point. The Aegis is looking better and better each time we see it, even though it didn't close out a game versus MIYA. I'm very confident that's at least going to put up a fighting chance versus Spargo when they play at kagaribi, because I wouldn't give up faith on Spargo if I were you. I still think he's going to make an incredible run at that tournament, but as it stands right now, it's going to be hard for him to be number 1 when ACOLA is having ones like this so consistently. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the sport. It's been absolutely unreal as of late. If there's anything I left out, got wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!